Hello everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So did you know that the first movie from Sergio Leone was not A Fistful of Dollars, but this movie, a sword and sandal movie from 1961 called The Colossus of Rhodes? I didn't know that until I started watching this movie, and I was like, huh? Sergio Leone directed this? How the hell did that happen? So in 1961, was it just the fact that, Sergio Leone was walking down the street, minding his own business, and then all of a sudden, hey you! Who, me? Yes, you. You're directing this movie. I am? Yes. So what do I do? Well, you just stand over there, direct these guys, tell them what to do, tell them what to say, and make sure nobody fucks up. I don't know if that was the case or not, but I do know one thing, that this movie is better than most other sword and sandal movies I've seen from this period. It does have its flaws, but I think it is a more than decent combination of swashbuckling adventure and palace intrigue. We shall see in which category this one falls on. This is The Colossus of Rhodes. So the Colossus of Rhodes have recently been unveiled. It is the latest attempt at making Rhodes an impenetrable fortress from attacks from the outside, and the King of Rhodes really feels secure now with the big Colossus statue that can stop any ship, and the big ramparts that they have built, and Rhodes is now secure, and he feels so secure that he's inviting all of these powerful guests like the Phoenicians and other islands around them to a big banquet to just show off how awesome he is and stuff like that. One of the other people who shows up on Rhodes is Dario. He is an Athenian hero of some description. He has come to Rhodes because Rhodes is believed to be the island of peace, and he just wants some peace and quiet in his life. Spoiler alert, he ain't gonna get any of that. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Now, the King of Rhodes does have some things that, threaten his reign, because there are these rebels that are, threatening him and try to kill him and stuff like that. The rebels wants to, Dario to help them, and they're trying to approach him and, trying to recruit him and stuff like that, but their recruiting attempts isn't very fruitful because Dario isn't interested in battles and stuff like that. He's most interested in trying to get laid, because he has spotted a very gorgeous woman that he's following, and they have some banters and stuff like that, talking to each other, and all of a sudden he ends up in the catacombs. Now, down in the catacombs he accidentally overhears the King of Rhodes talking to his guests, and they're discussing politics and alliances and stuff like that, and they find out that he has been eavesdropping, and they doesn't believe that he's just this innocent guy who just happened to walk in on this meeting that was very, very secret. Because he's Athenian, they believe that he might be a traitor or a spy or stuff like that, because they really mistrust the Athenians. So now Dario wants to try to leave Rhodes, but the king has shut down the entire island, and no ships are being able to leave Rhodes until he is captured. So he's running around trying to hide from the king's guards and stuff like that, and he meets another mysterious woman who tells him that I will help you get out of here, and they're taking this boat, and they're gonna try to escape the island. And when they go through the legs of the Colossus of Rhodes, that is when the Greeks sets in their great surprise for them, because the Colossus of Rhodes is not just a statue, it is a statue that can drop down Greek fire on oncoming ships. Greek fire is a kind of primitive version of napalm, essentially, so it burns the ships to bits. But the thing was that when this, molten thing were, dripping down between the legs of the Colossus, it looks like he had the runs and were basically shitting fire. It's a visual that is kind of tricky to forget once you've seen it. So he's of course captured again, and he and the woman escapes, and now we have a sword and sandal movie. Now, one problem this movie has was the fact that it both tries to be a colorful spectacular sword and sandal epic with, you know, swashbuckling adventures and stuff like that, but it also tries to be a kind of a costume drama with palace intrigues and backstabbing and stuff like that. And these two things could never quite, you know, merge in a good way. So that is a problem this movie had, but for the most part I thought that this movie was entertaining. You know, the fighting sequences look like shit, but so does Julius Caesar and Ben-Hur, and I think those two movies are pretty damn good. So I mean, I can forgive, you know, this movie for having not so impressive and not so well choreographed fighting sequences. That is totally fine. I didn't think that the ending was the strongest part of the movie, because mostly it was just too many cogs that were supposed to fit together. It was a little bit abrupt because it felt like they had basically, you know, skipped a couple of sequences, and also it was a little bit of a, huh? So that was it then? It was a little bit rushed, and it dampened my enthusiasm for this movie ever so slightly, but for the most part, this is a pretty damn good movie. I like the characters, I like the sets of this movie. The sets are massive, and there are sequences in this movie with tons and tons of extra, and as I said, huge sets, and the scope is pretty damn impressive, so it looks good. And I will say that the soundtrack is fantastic. It kind of reminded me a little bit about Conan the Barbarian, and any movie that has a soundtrack that reminds me of Conan the Barbarian is a-okay in my book. When it comes to the acting, it is your standard 60s kind of over-the-top acting that sometimes can be a little silly, and also because this movie is an Italian movie, some of the overacting was very, very Italian, so you have that thing to look forward to also. But one thing that an Italian movie has an advantage when it comes to, you know, the execution of a movie compared to a Hollywood movie is the fact that they can sometimes throw in a big old wrench in that, you know, cliche machine, and stuff can happen that you didn't see coming a mile away, including this movie. And there's no way around it. Foreign movies have also the advantage of being a lot less predictable than Hollywood movies does. So how does this movie stack up, you know, against the rest of Sergio Leone's filmography? It is the least good movie that he has done, but, you know, it is weird to think that a guy who directed this would, you know, direct one of the greatest trilogies of movies that has ever been made before the decade was over. And also having made some of the absolutely greatest westerns of all time. You would not believe it by watching this movie. Johnny Dumfa could probably have directed this one, but I can sort of think that maybe Sergio Leone improved this movie just by, you know, being Sergio Leone, and maybe he, you know, learned a lot from doing this. But this is probably the most epic movie he has ever directed, if you're not counting, you know, Once Upon a Time in America for the runtime, because I think that this movie must have had a bigger budget than, you know, even that movie had, because this movie looks good. And if this movie could have been either a, you know, I, Claudius, or maybe it could have been a, you know, swashbuckling adventure of, you know, Errol Flynn type or something like that, this movie could have probably been even better than it is. But as it stands right now, this is a very entertaining sword and sandal movie that has a little bit of a problem with its identity, but I will say that it is more things that I liked in this movie than, you know, the things that didn't like. So it's a win nevertheless, and I recommend this movie if you haven't seen it. If you're curious to see how Sergio Leone got started, you could most definitely do worse. I give the Colossus of Rhodes 61 points. It is a good sword and sandal movie. It takes a while for the movie to get going, but once you get over that threshold, the rest of the movie is pretty damn solid. And there are bits and pieces of this movie that is actually kind of awesome and looks great. So I'll see you next time for Well So and So reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.